Well, good morning, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to welcome you to the 2019 ACEC North Carolina NCDOT Joint Transportation Conference. Again, my name is Clyburn, and I have the honor of serving as your president for ACEC for the 2019-2020 year. And I want to extend a huge thank you to each of you for making this conference a success by attending. And without you, there's no conference. But first, I have to extend a heartfelt thank you to our co-chairs, Greg Coles and Terry Canales, and of course, our 39-person Transportation Conference Planning Committee. That committee works tirelessly for several weeks and months preparing for this wonderful event to make it a success. So, for conference committee members that are here, please stand so that we can appropriately recognize you. Your hard work has resulted in this conference being a sellout conference for the third year in a row. So thank you for your hard work. Another thank you should be extended to our ACEC staff. They are the heartbeat of ACEC's organization. They take care of all the behind-the-scenes details. So Jim Smith, our executive director, Fred Burchett, our assistant executive director, Jessica Hartong, our events planner, Meredith Houston, our back office manager, and Randy Viberg. If you're here today, please stand so we can properly recognize and thank you. Also, would like to extend a big thank you to our ACEC North Carolina Board of Directors, and also want to thank their companies for giving them the bandwidth and financial resources to serve our industry and to just be dedicated and engaged to help us making the business of engineering in North Carolina better. So if our board members that are present, would you please stand so that you can be recognized? Also want to extend a huge thank you to our 61 corporate sponsors that make this event successful. Please visit with them. Please acknowledge them. Many of them have exhibit booths out in the lobby area, so please visit with them. And we're also very fortunate to have a great venue here at the Raleigh Convention Center to hold our annual conference. So with the thank yous out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about ACEC. ACEC North Carolina was founded in 1969. So we have been celebrating this year our 50th anniversary of being in business, and that business is representing the business interests of engineering firms in North Carolina. Our membership has grown from a few small companies that band together and were accepted into the council back in 1969 to over 240 members now. And we also represent over 10,000 employees. And it's a firm-based membership, so all of your employees are members. So make sure that the word gets out that everyone from your marketing professionals to your technical professionals are all part of ACEC. We need their strength. Our mission is quite simple. It's to promote the business interests of engineering companies by providing legislative advocacy and business services. With regards to legislative advocacy, we are your voice in both Raleigh and Washington, D.C., and we also serve as technical and business resources for elected officials. They want to hear from us. They want to hear from you on issues that affect the business of engineering. We host and attend political events, and we team with other industry organizations when necessary to address issues facing our industry. With regards to legislative advocacy, we have two main missions. So at the state level, obviously, we're here for transportation, and that has been, and forever will be our biggest priority. Increased funding legislation, protecting strategic mobility formula, and of course, our Transportation Advisory Board. It's my opinion that we have the best DOT in the nation. So Secretary Trogdon, thank you for engaging with us on a quarterly basis to talk about issues affecting our industry. At the national level, we are very much engaged with regards to we need a large infrastructure bill, obviously, and we need to continue many other initiatives there. So we routinely engage with our national organization to lobby on behalf of our state for legislation that will help our business. Our second mission is business services. This is a great example of one of them in which we feel that we bring value by bringing together venues and opportunities for our colleagues and our clients to interact together to help make our businesses better. We have 5 committees that are dedicated to bringing business services to the industry, and that's transportation. And I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our transportation committee for the hard work that they do. It's one of our largest committees and most mature committees, so we thank you for your hard work in helping make transportation better in North Carolina. Our environment and energy, building and infrastructure, business practices, legislative, and we have 2 forums, the Senior Leaders Forum and the Future Leaders Program. Our Future Leaders Program is one of the most successful in the country. It typically sells out within weeks of registration opening, so if you have any young professionals that are looking to gain more business training in the business of engineering, please be on the lookout for the next class enrollment. And we also just launched a land development exchange and a past president's council. Now for a few highlights, there's a lot going on right now with ACEC North Carolina. One of our biggest accomplishments, as Gary Hartong mentioned last year while he was on stage, he said, be on the watch out for indemnification duty to defend legislation. Well, I'm proud to announce that that legislation passed, and it's historic for our industry, and that North Carolina is only one of 3 states that has this type of legislation that makes broad form indemnification and duty to defend obligations against public policy right out illegal. So I got to give everybody a round of applause for that. That is huge. Those contract conditions were previously uninsurable and forced us to have to make decisions that would potentially put our enterprise at risk. A few more highlights. Jim Smith was elected to the president of NACE. That's the National Association for Engineering Council Executives. So Jim will be on the executive committee for ACEC National and representing North Carolina in a big way. Stephanie Hashem was recently elected to the College of Fellows, and she's currently serving as our ACEC National Treasurer. And we just recently finished our 5-year strategic plan that was focused on taking ACEC North Carolina into the next 5 years on a very effective manner. We also launched a Past President Scholarship as well as a Young Professional of the Year Award. So how can you help? Please, we need your help. There is truth to the fact and the old adage of strength in numbers. So please respond to our calls to action whenever we need your help and your strength at the legislature to help advocate on issues that affect our industry. At one time, we had 6 or 8 elected officials in the legislature that were registered professional engineers. We're down to 1. So if any of you are looking at running, please let us know and we will get behind you. We need you. We need your expertise. And also, please engage with our elected officials on both the federal and the state level. We visit with them annually, and also we visit with them while they're home from DC in the district. So please stay engaged. And of course, we need your financial support for our 2 political action committees, as well as our C4, which is ECNC, Engineering Companies for North Carolina. Just as a quick recap, ECNC can take corporate and individual donations. That is our arm. ACEC North Carolina is only one of 2 states in the nation that has a independent expenditure account, or better known as a super PAC, that can take corporate funds to help educate and advocate on behalf of issues that affect our industry. Of course, our state PAC and our federal PAC, we also continue to need your support there. The state PAC is designed to help local candidates at the state level, and the national PAC is just that, our national PAC. We have several events coming up. The next one being our Building Infrastructure Symposium, and of course, our EEA Gala that we held at Pinehurst next month. So that being said, I will yield my time to the Secretary's leadership team, and I want to thank you again for your presence here today. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much, Derek. Next, we'd like to bring up Mr. John Sullivan, Director of our North Carolina Federal Highway Administration. Welcome to the podium.
Good morning. It certainly is a pleasure to be here with you today. What I'd like to do is really to share what is Federal Highway's priorities for the upcoming year, and then touch on the reauthorization of the Federal Highway Program, which I know is a significant issue to you. But at this point in time, I'd like to always remind our folks, although the program's expiring in September 30th, there is much to do, and we need to focus. So, you know, if you look at federal highways, what are we focused on? We have basically 4 strategic goals that we're focusing on. First and foremost is reducing the number of fatalities and serious injuries on our nation's transportation system. NHTSA just released its statistics for fatalities and serious injuries for 2018. And the trends are positive, with the exception of one area, which happens to be our administrator's new focus area, and that's reducing the number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes, fatalities, and serious injuries. So this is an area where in North Carolina, if you look at our statistics of crashes, this is an area, while our trends are down, this is an area also where our numbers are going the wrong way or opposite of the national trends for fatalities and serious injuries. The second really is advancing a performance-based federal aid program. And really, we've been working hard, and we need to continue to work hard on trying to understand how does the investment of federal funds relate to improved infrastructure condition and improved mobility, whether that mobility is in terms of decreased travel time or improved reliability or accessibility to get to places we couldn't get to before. So really, we're working hard on trying to understand how do we find out how much money was actually spent for improving infrastructure condition, how much money was spent for improving mobility, and then really tying that investment to what is the effect. If we've done some work in some of our national measures, really may not be the right measures. So what we're trying to do now is work with our partners at NCDOT. Are there better ways to measure, to demonstrate the effect of the investment we put into transportation? Innovation is another focus area, and what we're trying to do is work with our partners, ACEC, our contractors, our departments of transportations, really to identify what do they believe is the best innovations to advance for the country. And we have this program that we're calling Everyday Counts, but essentially what it is a stakeholder-driven technology deployment mechanism where we provide funding to advance or take the risk out of innovation, or to provide funding to start the deployment of innovation. And this really ties back to our role as the Federal Highway Administration way back to 1912 and 1916, where the predominant role was really to share best practices across the states on how to build highways. Lastly, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, is accountability. Really, we have two objectives. One is the efficient and effective use of our dollars to support our safety and mobility goals. And then really the last part is the expectation from our stakeholders is that we ensure reasonable compliance with the federal requirements. Now, under efficient and effective use of federal aid funds, Federal Highways has been really focused on looking at our regulatory requirements and our policy requirements to see how do these really tie to improving mobility, safety, and infrastructure condition. So right here is a list of opportunities where Federal Highways has taken and sort of looked at our requirements and sort of streamlined them. The first one is in patent and proprietary products. You know, this was a regulation that was created in the beginning of the program to try and stimulate competition. Okay? What we found is it was stifling the deployment of innovation. So essentially, as the program transitioned to a performance-based program where the states have a set amount of money and are investing in it to improve mobility, we found that perhaps this regulation was really not required in a performance-based program. So we published a rule and we rescinded that part of the regulation. Another mechanism, we're always looking for better ways to deliver our contracts, and one ways that our partner said would be very helpful is to give them the flexibility of indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery type of contracting. So we issued a reg to include this as one of the allowable competitive processes to conclude for contracting federal aid projects. Safe harbor indirect costs was a pilot program that Federal Highways made permanent. And this was really to help small businesses gain access and entry into the preliminary engineering field as a company. Basically what this allows is an entry firm that doesn't have an indirect cost rate to use one that's established and set by the state DOTs until they do enough work to where audit can establish that indirect cost rate. Interstate Access, you know, previously I mentioned at a conference that we had taken our interstate policy points, which when somebody wanted to add a new interchange or modify an interchange, we had 8 policy points that people had to address. We boiled those down really to looking at the operational impact on the interstate. and really simplified that process to where the other requirements were already things that metropolitan planning organizations or state already had to do. So we just simplified the application to really look at the impact to the operations of the interstate. The design standards, we talked about at a previous conference where Federal Highways simplified the design standards and number of geometric design elements for highway projects. There used to be 13 controlling criteria. Now it's down to 10 for high-speed routes and down to 2 for low-speed routes. The other thing we're looking at is updating our reg to look at 3R standards. You know, previously, if we were upgrading an interstate facility or a freeway and we had an old design exception, theoretically, when we were building that rehabilitation project or reconstruction project, we should have reissued that design exception. Now what we're trying to do is allow the 3R design guides to apply to these type of projects on the interstate system. Our National Bridge Inspection Standards, right now we're working through the process of trying to create more flexibility to take a risk-based approach to doing the inspection frequencies on the bridge inspection process. So our newer structures, we can reduce the inspection frequency based on the condition of the structure. And the last thing we've done is reissued our guidance on operational type of projects, trying to clarify what qualifies as construction that would be subject to our competitive bidding processes under 23 United States Code Section 112 versus the equipments and other deployments which would not qualify and be constrained to our contracting mechanisms in that section of the law. Streamlining project delivery, you know, the USDOT has issued 2 interim policies. One policy is really dealing with implementation of one federal decision, and this is really focusing our time and energy on establishing schedules, milestones with our partners, our stakeholders, our environmental community on delivering major projects. It really follows the principles of the merger process where we get agreement on our purpose and need of the project, our alternatives to study, and then getting down to the preferred alternative in LEDPA. But really what it's emphasizing is the establishment of milestones for schedule that all agencies are expected to follow, and then create a dispute elevation process that gets elevated to our administrator and then the department level. The other thing that we've issued, or USDOT has issued an interim policy, is on page limits and for NEPA documents, and then focused analysis. This goes hand in hand with the one federal decision. We're trying to reemphasize what CEQ put into place back in the 1970s, which is environmental documents should be focused on issues of significance, and we should de-emphasize the issues that are not significant. How are we going to do this? Really, what we're going to do is we're going to try and better apply project scoping to really work with our partners to really identify what are the issues of significance. We're working on a project now where it's been probably 2 or 3 years where we've been working with our resource agencies. Through that time period, they haven't identified a significant issue. So we downgraded an EIS to an EA because of that. What else do we want to do? We're really emphasizing using planning decisions and planning information in the NEPA process. Notice I didn't call it planning to environmental linkage, because I think there's a common misunderstanding that we've got to have a planning environmental linkage study to use that information in NEPA. And that's not what our regs say, that's not what the law says, and that's not what our guidance says. Basically, we can use planning decisions and information as long as there's been public involvement in that process and there's a document. So we can take information that our MPOs create. It doesn't have to be a Pell study, and we can use it in project development process. That all boils down to what are the page limit targets for EISs. We're targeting 150 pages. For environmental assessments, 75 pages. Now, this would not include our executive summary or technical appendices, but the neat thing about it is it builds in accountability. If a department and a division office want to exceed the page limits, we have to send a request in to our administrator's office, which would have to seek their concurrence as well as the Office of Policy within the Secretary's office. Now, the cool thing that they've done to reinforce the importance of delivering on time is that if we send in a concurrence request, that concurrence is deemed given if they do not respond in 10 days. So with this policy, you can see they're trying to help us focus our analysis and then focus on delivering on time by creating that accountability for themselves in the process. You know, for North Carolina, we're trying to continue our risk-based approach to helping the department and our consulting firms and all our partners deliver our projects. You know, we see our role as facilitating the delivery of the federal aid program. While we expect compliance, really Congress created this program to make improvements, and we see that's our role, is to help facilitate making improvements to our transportation system. So how are we doing this? Well, we're trying to delegate what we would call routine transactions, and then focus our efforts on those more complex issues or riskier transactions, where we can help facilitate getting the project delivered on time. So how do we go about assessing compliance? Well, we go about it from a programmatic approach, but it's not really focused solely on compliance. We're looking at compliance and issues that we can find to make improvements to help deliver something more efficiently. For example, we did an assessment of the application of our programmatic CEs, and we found very reasonable compliance with that, but we also identified opportunities to make our programmatic CE agreement better. And so the Director of Technical Service, Werner, and I just recently signed an updated agreement, which we'll hear a little bit more about, but the idea being we assessed compliance, we evaluated what we were doing, we looked for opportunities to make improvement, and we did. And so that's the way we want to approach the federal aid program here in North Carolina. Lastly, I'll focus on how are we going to, our big focus is really helping or assisting NCDOT's development and integration and application of their integrated project delivery, which you'll hear more about. So now I'm going to transition to talk about reauthorization, and this slide is not blank because there's nothing going on up there. Okay. Federal Highways is really, you know, while you might not see a whole lot of activity because the media is really covering other events, Federal Highways has provided 194 technical assistance requests to support our congressional committees over this summer. So there is a lot of activity going on in the background. What I'd like to do now is really to go back and look at what's gone on, so it might help alleviate fears and show you sort of the importance that Congress and our leaders in DC view transportation. So there's been a lot of support for transportation. If you go back to Safety Lou, that was back 2005, the highway authorizations exceeded the revenue. And so I'll have a slide that shows you how Congress has made up that difference. So think about this, from 2005 to present day, the highway authorizations have exceeded the ability of the revenue to support the program. So we're talking about 14, 15 years of this process going on. So right now, the FAST Act, it expires September 30, and this chart basically shows you the authorizations. North Carolina's share of these authorizations is very important. Our share of the apportionments, which is the funding that Federal Highways distributes by formula, is 2.67% of the national apportionment, 2.67%. If you look at the revenue that's collected by the Highway Trust, for the Highway Trust Fund, North Carolina's percentage of the revenue collected is 3%. And so you might ask, how does that happen? Well, if you look, the apportionment factors that were used to distribute the funds, those were created over almost 15 to 20 years ago. For example, million vehicle miles of travel. North Carolina's share in 2004 was 2.6%. Based on the growth that we have in our state, our share now is 3.2%. So one thing I think folks are looking at, is it reasonable to continue to make the apportionment based on something that was determined back in 2000s? So that's one issue that some states are looking at. So how has Congress really made up this gap? Well, this is really a table showing you the general fund transfers to transportation. And so you can see that Congress has transferred $114 billion out of the general fund to help advance highway or transportation projects. You know, this is a slide I think the department deserves a lot of credit. So if you look at our apportionments and our ability to use funds, which is what we call our obligation limitation, our share is roughly about $1.1 billion annually. But here you can see that the department has been very aggressive in applying for other funds to really use our obligation authority to advance transportation projects. This table really is showing you the different mechanisms that the department has been able to apply and receive additional authority to advance projects. So the first column is really what we call after August redistribution. Basically what this is, in August time period, Federal Highways looks at our programs and we determine how much of the funds are not going to be used by the end of that federal fiscal year, which is September 30. Then we send out a notice and we ask states to apply for additional redistribution of obligation authority. The state has been very aggressive in the last few years in doing that, and you can see in 2017 we had $113 million, 2018 $166 million, and $115 million in 2019. Now, the neat thing about this, remember I said our share of apportionment is 2.67%. In 2019, we got 2.9%. In 2018, 4%. So how have we done this? It's because the department had projects that were ready to be delivered. So this is an area where the department was aggressive in applying for federal funds, but also y'all should be congratulated for helping the department get these projects ready so that we could commit the money to these projects. The department's also been very aggressive in applying for discretionary grants. Now this is money that's held off the top before the apportionments and is reserved where states have to apply and compete for money. And so you can see in 2019 we had a lot of success finalizing our term sheets and our agreements, and we've committed another $162 million to projects like I-95 US 70, bridge replacement program, bridge replacement, Blue Ridge Road, project in Hickory, and another project. And so emergency relief, unfortunately, we've had to deal with hurricanes. One thing I think Federal Highways is proud of is our ability to partner with our committees to really solicit how much money the states need. The last 2 fiscal years, Congress has passed $1 billion in supplemental emergency relief. So in 2018 and 2019, Congress has passed another $1 billion to help supplement the repair of federal aid highways. In North Carolina, you can see how the state has really been active billing the Federal Highway Administration. And then lastly, the Appropriation Act, and this is my point here, is there's still a lot of support for transportation improvements. So through the authorization process, which is the 5-year bill, it establishes the total amount, the maximum amount. Then we have our Appropriation Acts, which set our spending limits each year. Well, in the last 2 fiscal years, Congress has given states additional authority to spend money outside the Federal Highway Authorization Act. And so you can see that the department has been advancing projects through the supplemental allocation. So talk about reauthorization. You know, I think, you know, the Environmental Public Works Committee out of the Senate has passed out a bill. It hadn't been considered by the Senate yet. It increases funding for highway authorization. Okay? The Senate Finance, Commerce, and Banking Committee still has to deal with the transit and the rail, also the finances. But part of this is really, you know, I know we need additional revenue, but I think there's a lot of support for infrastructure investments. I figure that Congress will find a way to deliver, and whether it's through new revenue or continue the status quo. They are increasing the funds. We've been providing 190 technical supports over the summer, so there is activity. Some of the themes, though, the signals coming out of EPW are a little bit different. For example, you know, since Safety Lou, we haven't really had congressional earmarks. Okay, we're seeing a signal that Maybe earmarks are coming back. And why is this important? Because earmarks are deducted off that top number and reduce the amount of funds that are distributed to the state. Another signal we're seeing from EPW is there's an expectation and investment for more multimodal freight. And so we see the MAP Act created an advisory freight program, FAST Act created money for the freight program, and then now we're seeing discussions on more investment for multimodal freight. MAP 21 and the FAST Act reduced the number of federal programs down to about 5 core programs. Signal we're seeing is an increase, 23 new programs, 3 additional core programs, 20 more discretionary programs. So these are some of the signals we're seeing that we need to pay attention to and figure out how do we adapt to those sort of changes if they come. Lastly, I just want to thank you for what you do to help improve transportation, our mobility, help improve our infrastructure condition, and help save lives and serious injuries on our nation's highway. It's without you, we would not be able to deliver this program, and I want to thank you for your efforts.
Thank you very much, John. Next, I'd like to introduce our secretary, Mr. Jim Trogdon, to the podium. Please welcome Jim Trogdon.
Well, I thought some of my smart experts were going next, but thanks for the introduction, Terry, and thanks to ACEC and all your members for what you do for us. John hit some really important points, and I want to talk about some others and a bigger picture of where we are today at NCDOT. For the past 2.5 years, I'm going to cover some of the successes that all you guys have been a part of. Our TIP annually went from $1.5 billion to $3 billion per year for the last 2.5 years. We currently have active $8.4 billion in construction projects going on across the state. That's up from $4.2 billion historically. We have achieved what I would call initially streamlining, improvement of efficiencies in project delivery. And Chris is going to talk a little bit more about IPD and where we're taking it from where it is today. But just getting to the 3 years for an EIS, 2 years for an EA, and 1 year for CE, we've met all of those targets on average in all of our projects, and we think there's ways to improve more. John talked about some really important numbers on how we're achieving these delivery process and projects. August redistribution and grants were one of those ways, and so I like to summarize $400 million over the last 2 years in August redistribution and $200 million in grants, just our grants, not all of our partners, which you can add on more there. That's really helped us really accelerate critical projects across the state. So a wonderful example of that is the first widening of I-95 with which is now currently advertised with the adding of fiber from South Carolina to Virginia. That's a game changer in preparing for future technologies and connected and autonomous vehicles, also reducing the fiber and broadband gap across our state where we have economies that really need a boost. We see that as being a win-win in all of those areas. Condition of our infrastructure, I think we moved from resurfacing about 2% of our inventory a year to a little over 4.5%, which has helped improve our both interstate U.S. routes and North Carolina primaries. We're still working on how to improve the secondary system. And then also additional investment in bridges. For the first time in our history, we're below 10% structurally deficient bridges. Over the last 5 years, we've moved from 18.5 down to 9.6% structurally deficient bridges. Why is that important? A lot of those are on the primary facilities that we took off the list. And how do you move an economy? How do you support agriculture? How do you move freight if you have structurally deficient and posted bridges on your primary network? So those are all coming down in all divisions across the state. Storm response has been important. I think in January 2017, 5 months after Matthew, we still had 200 roads closed. Our divisions did an outstanding job because of the focus. And so after Florence, we had 98% of the roads open in 45 days and 100% open within 60 days. So that's part of the accomplishments that I can just roll off the top of my head. And a lot of that is through our partnerships, and ACEC is one of those outstanding partners. Because as you know, delivering transportation in a rapidly growing state will be the difference between being economically competitive in the future or not being competitive. Why is that important? I think North Carolina is one of the four in real growth, not percent. In real growth, that's real population growth, one of the four fastest growing states in the nation. It's us, Texas, Florida, and Georgia are the fastest top growing in real growth. And so to put it in perspective, a lot of people like to focus on the Northeast and how important the Northeast is. We're growing faster than New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Minnesota collectively. All of those added together, we grow faster annually. So that's why transportation is important in our state. What are some of the challenges? I think every one of you know what some of our challenges are to date. Storms has really changed. From 2004 to 2016, we were averaging $65 million a year. Expenditures on all categories of storms since 2017, that number's gone to $222 million. And all of that is unbudgeted. I get no appropriation for that. None of us ever has. So how do we accommodate those rapidly growing numbers? I would tell you that's the biggest challenge we face today, and we've got to find a better way of paying for disasters than just out of hide. And then MAP Act has been a significant challenge. In May and June of last year, we had two central court rulings that changed what we were doing drastically. Two rulings out of Cumberland County was that we had to pay 8% compounded interest on all settlements and all court cases moving forward. And then also the court's ruling was that the day the map was filed was considered a full take, not just easement, not just limiting rights, but a full taking of rights. And then we had a sanctions ruling in Forsyth County that basically says we can't wait for the courts to figure this out. We better settle these cases and settle them much more quickly than we had. So in the previous 5 years, we had settled 6 cases, and since July of last year, the number is now about 360 and growing to 400 within the next few months. Both of those two together resulted in about $600 million worth of impacts to both of our programs, both the storms on the Highway Fund side and MAP Act on the Highway Trust Fund side. Without those two, we would be here today with a $780 million cash balance at the upper end of our operational range, and no one would even know what the word cash balance means. So that's where we are. What we've been doing to move forward is starting January and February, we started reducing programs. We've been reducing our expenditures on programs in all areas since then. Started in February and March working with the General Assembly initially on Senate Bill 608 and House Bill 847, which was our initial request for either $250 to $300 million in loan to get us through this initial 6 to 12 month challenge. That wasn't a vehicle that was moving in either chamber, so we settled on Senate Bill 605, and the rest would come through the Budget Act. Senate Bill 605 was passed, which gave us a $90 million loan, which really helped us with an initial challenge of getting through May, June, and July. We really didn't see much relief in the Budget Act, which was vetoed and now just passed most recently, I think last week, in a mini budget, which then raises the cash floor from $282 million to $292 million. We're going to be fine over the next few months, and we'll start growing our cash balance back starting late December, early January, as we typically do every winter, and we'll be what I would consider back in the operational range of $500 to $700 million by February and March. So the initial challenge is over, but as you as an industry particularly know, we had to slow down almost more than 850 projects. I anticipate 444 of those will be moving back forward at its regular rate between January and May of next year, and so you'll start seeing us turn 444 out of the 850 back on during the next 7 months. What's the solution? Number one is the solution, we've got to find a better way to pay for disasters. There's two schools of thought out there. One is we're going to see these rates of disasters proceeding into the future forever. And the other is it's cyclical and it may go back to the 65 million. I've really got to be prepared for the worst case, and so the worst case is I need to find a way to do that, and it doesn't need to impact the cash balance on both of our operational programs nor our trust fund programs. So how do we do that? That's what we're working on. And then the second is how do we pay for transportation moving forward, because we know even outside of disasters, court rulings, we believe that motor fuels will not sustain us in the future. And certainly not sustain both the state and the federal investment, and the federal government's already looking at what are the options to sustain transportation at the federal level. We believe there's answers there. That's why I established the NC First Commission, who's been meeting quarterly since last spring. We'll be meeting through next year. 2 economists, 2 financial experts, 1 large city mayor, 1 small town mayor, 1 county commissioner, 5 CEOs, the head of the community colleges and the head of the rural center are on that commission. And we believe we'll find the right blend of the right recommendations, not only what's the right investment for transportation moving forward in a rapidly growing state, but also what are those sources that we need to sustain that kind of growth and that kind of investments for all modes of transportation. We plan on having those recommendations ready for the General Assembly by the end of next year, entering into the 2021 long session, and we will be working with ACEC and all of our partners as we develop those because it will be key to the future. So the future is good. Our initial challenges we'll be getting out of by the end of this fall and winter, but we still believe investing in all the things that we were doing before in all modes of transportation, both on the TIP side and investing in higher degrees of operation and maintenance on our highway fund side will be critical. Look forward to working with you moving forward and really appreciate the partnership, because without it, we wouldn't be successful today. So as you know, we've reduced our targets in the TIP. Instead of $3 billion next year, I'm shooting for between 2.3 and 2.5. And we're confident that we'll make that. We believe that we'll be selling again build-in C bonds at $300 million, targeting April of next year. We have a right-of-way budget for the same program of $350 million and a preliminary engineering budget for $375, and that doesn't count what we'll be doing on the bond side as well, which whatever will be bond eligible under build-in C, as well as another Garvey sale. Looking back in history, I think we were averaging about $200 million a year in preliminary engineering. This year will be $375, which was less than what we did last year. However, I still believe that the partnerships will not change. You'll not see much in our changing our focus on delivery of those projects. We'll just work hard to keep within that budget as best as possible, realizing that things will change over time. Anytime we've got to be more aggressive in August redistribution, in grants and others, those will also be areas that we'll continue to focus on, because as you can see, going from $1 billion a year to $1.4 billion in obligation, we've got more projects out there that need to be built across the state in every division, every tier, every mode. So our moving in the last 2 years from funding 17% of projects requested to somewhere between 27 and 28% of projects requested by our partners, you can see is a big improvement. But when you think about it, we ask our MPOs and RPOs and transit agencies to submit your best projects. We cap that across the state based on your size, population. and we moved from funding 17% of your highest priorities to 28%. Is that the right answer for a growing state? I don't think so, so we won't be satisfied until we can get that number closer to 50. And that's what I believe NC First will be focused on. How do we find that appropriate investment level to get these really critical projects across our state built, because everyone in their community knows they have critical needs that are unmet. I've been to 100 counties in North Carolina. I've only found one that said, you're building too much, please stop. That was Polk County. They've since reconsidered and have one more they'd like to be built. So the needs are out there. The opportunities are great. The partnership is valuable, and we really thank you for what you do for us and look forward to moving North Carolina ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Now we're going to have Chris Werner up, the Director of Technical Services, to support some of the things that Secretary has mentioned. Chris?
Thank you very much, Terry. You always run the risk of following Secretary Trogdon or Bobby Lewis of scratching out your talking points. I'm not going to have to do so much of that today, so that's good. After brainstorming on an outline of what I thought you all would like to hear most and what you would be most interested in, developed an outline, and then I went back and I looked at my presentation from last year. And what I found was a continued common theme. Maintaining a common theme in your day, your week, your month, over a course of a year is a challenge. I often joke that I live in a world of AMs and PMs. What am I doing this morning and what do I need to be doing this afternoon? So you see, as time goes by, which I think many of you can attest to, your to-do list continuously grows, issues pop up, various demands and opportunities that you just can't say no to and you have to take on. You can easily become distracted and derailed or even move off course from what your common plan is. So upon reviewing my outline versus my talking points from last year, I'm happy to say that we've stayed on plan, which is a huge deal. We've gone through a lot of changes over the last year, and our focus continues, which is improved program delivery. What does improved program delivery look like? What does it even mean? Who should be involved? The definitions and answers can vary, and they should vary. The further and further we go along this process, we continue to find new answers to those questions. Over the last year since we spoke, we've had many successes, and I'm glad to hear that John touched on our successes and thanked you for your participation, and the Secretary thanked you for your participation in our successes, because that's exactly what I was going to do as well. And there's many, many ways to show what our successes have been, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but just a few. For example, looking at our project delivery statistics between 2012 and 2017, preparing a categorical exclusion or a minimum criteria determination checklist averaged about 51 months. Since 2017, that averages down to 11 months. Similarly, for environmental assessments and finding of no significant impact documents, in the past we averaged around 65 months. That average is now down to 18 months. So, Mr. Secretary, if you're still here, we've achieved 12 and 24. We're still working on 36. We've seen many changes in our process and procedures that are directly having a positive impact to the overall delivery of our projects. We have NCDOT staff, our industry partners, as well as resource agencies that are constantly assisting us in identifying ways to improve our efficiency and effective delivery of our program. Again, we've seen a lot of successes. I'm not going to touch on them all here, but that doesn't mean that our pursuit doesn't stop. In order to achieve this goal of improving program delivery, we created integrated project delivery, which you all should be aware of by now. I'm not calling it an initiative, not calling it an effort. I don't want anything like that labeled with it. This is a culture change. A culture change for improving how we deliver our program. IPD has become the umbrella for many, many efforts to improve efficiency and effective delivery projects. IPD is focused on eliminating duplication, ensuring collaboration, expecting communication from amongst all of our teams to ensure that they're all focused on improving business practices that have the largest impact of the department's goal. The efforts are cross-functioning, coming to DOT, seeing how large DOT is, seeing how many partners and how many units and how many sections and how many groups. If this was easy, we would have done it a long time ago. As we complete priority items of our IPD to-do list, we're constantly adding issues or areas that needing improvement or clarification that will result in a repeatable and transparent process for our staff, our industry partners, and our resource agencies. As such, the NCDOT's project delivery vision is pretty simple. It's a culture where we promise what we are going to do and we do what we promise. I strongly urge you all to visit the IPD session later today. I also recommend you visit the IPD project website, subscribe to the newsletters so you can keep up with what IP is doing for the department in delivering the program. I also recommend that if you have any ideas or questions, that you hit the Contact Us button and let us know what you're thinking. While IPD is spearheading much of these major changes, many efforts in the department are underway that also are participating in improving program delivery. The Complete Streets policy has been updated and was adopted in August and is effective immediately. Consideration for Complete Streets should be done at the project inception phase, project initiation phase, and it should be considered throughout the development of the project. The inclusion of the Complete Streets policy should no longer be looked at as an add-on to a project. It should be something that is considered throughout the entire life cycle. The new policy applies to all projects that don't have an environmental document completed to date. An effort which strongly aligns with improving program delivery is Project Atlas. For those of you that have been living under a rock, I'm going to remind you of what Atlas stands for. Project Atlas is advancing transportation through linkages, automation, and screening. And it's one of the key features of Atlas is it basically is a one-stop shop for all GIS data that, most GIS data that we use in project development. Project Atlas currently has 3 components to it: the screening tool, the search tool, and the workbench. We see Project Atlas as an opportunity to start screening projects from a programmatic perspective, helping our resource agency partners focus on the projects we really need their attention. I'm not going to get into Project Atlas because there's a session later today. I would suggest that you attend that session if you're more interested in Project Atlas. John talked about the CE Programmatic Agreement. Earlier this month, both John and I signed it. It is available for use right now. I can tell you that the new form will be required on all projects starting in January, as the old form is going to be retired. The new CE form should be our standard when we're working on NEPA and SEPA documents, as this will produce a federal level documentation which provides the department the maximum flexibility when we're looking for construction funding. For more on that, the Environmental Policy Unit will be rolling out frequently asked questions, trainings, and information on its implementation. Over the past year, we've been trying to work on ORD implementation, or Open Road Designer implementation. And if you recall, Chief Engineer Little sent out a memo stating that we were going to start using it in March. March has come and gone. What we found out, and I'll keep it simple, is we were probably one of the first states that really was looking to implement it to the degree with which we were proposing. We have a session later today that was going to talk more about the details of open road design as well as the implementation of Project Wise. A date for rollout of implementation will be provided in that session, and we'll also put it in the IPD newsletter. The merger process for years has been receiving black eyes for its perception that it slows projects down, that it's inflexible, that it's convoluted, that it's a one process fits all projects. A lot of that would be true. As a result of that, we are currently in the process of revisiting the merger process. We're trying to take the recipe and the cookbook mentality out of it. Try to provide guidance for flexibility, so we are forcing our project managers and our technical units to think about what that specific project requires versus one process for all projects. These are just some of the ways the department is continuing on focusing on improving program delivery. In the future, we want to establish a culture of accountability. To get us to this goal, we will continue to develop tools that our staff does not have at the time to allow them to be accountable for project delivery. Tools that result with a consistent and repeatable, transparent process while meeting the state and federal regulations with a focus on scope, schedule, budget, and quality. All of these efforts I've mentioned above and more of what that we have in the works will be assisting us in having a clear understanding of what our staff is expected, what we need our consultants, partners to help us with. But really, it's going back to what's the scope of the project and really asking that question. And then it's embracing the utilization of an MS project schedule. So everybody has a clear understanding of how a project is going to go from point A to point B and where everybody is involved. Quality, we are rethinking our quality program and trying to get our folks to be reviewing specifically what they need to versus redlining a set of plans with preference in there. We also want our industry partners to understand what we require. Many of you are serving as GSCs, essentially doing the review process for the department. So we want to make sure that we are providing clear expectations on what that includes. From a budget perspective, we've never really managed our projects as project managers to a budget. We don't have the technology in our systems to manage to a budget. We are implementing PE breakdowns for every project on a monthly basis for the entire fiscal year, and we're going to start tracking our project budgets on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. All of these efforts are connected and integrated into one another. However, in the past, we've not given all of the resources to our staff. That's going to change. In regards to tracking our program, we've been closely monitoring the cash balance projections. Secretary Trogdon touched on it. As many of you know, beginning in last January, we actually started slowing much of the program down. I say that to get to the point of PE was actually one of the very last things that we slowed down. Over the summer, we were implementing strategies to slow PE down by controlling expenditures and overnight travel. However, based upon the expenditures in the cash model, we felt like we needed to make more cuts to the program in order to stay above the legislative floor. The strategies we considered, and this is the part that I really want to share with everybody because I get this question a lot. How did you determine what projects you were going to suspend versus what you were going to move forward with? We looked at various programs and projects as number one. We didn't just look at projects. We focused on what needed to be completed in the near future or what was considered high priority. We worked with our division and our business unit heads to get their recommendations on what should be priority. But ultimately, we had to pare down their lists to what you saw in the August 30th memo. Primarily, projects that have been approved to move forward included projects that are on the 12-month let list or are coming onto the 12-month let list, or projects that have bond or grant funding that's scheduled for delivery in the near term. The original memo and the list of projects is posted on the project management website. I will tell you, you'll also notice that there is an update. It's a living document. We have monthly requests coming in from the divisions asking for projects to be started, and we've told them to do that from a risk-based perspective. If we don't start this project, what's the ramifications? And so we've actually been turning projects on, and those projects have been removed from the suspension list. We have a small number of projects added to the suspension list because the division's considered other projects higher priority now that they've seen what's happening. As I alluded to before, we will closely monitor the PE monthly expenditures versus the budgets established, with the expectations that project managers at DOT will work with our consultant partners to live within those budgets. We feel this is a good opportunity to initiate some good business practices in tracking our budgets, but also to make sure that we are conforming to what our contract says, that invoices will be submitted on a monthly basis and DOT will pay according to our contract. In preparation for when the cash balance stabilizes, we're in the process of developing another strategy. Which projects and programs are we going to turn on whenever we're given the green light? Until that time, we've actually tried to take a strategic look at what we should be working on that we're not supposed to be working on. And presenting that to the chief engineer's office as well as the secretary's office as strategy to move forward in order to prevent the program from starting back up as seamlessly as possible. A couple of examples might include threatened endangered species survey habitat that's often has windows of time where it can be performed. Additionally, we're getting ready to approach flight season for aerial imagery and mapping. And so we are working with all of our different units to make sure we are strategically pushing things that originally have been shut off. And we've had a lot of success in turning some of those pieces on. In closing, I thought it would be good to touch a bit on the program going forward. Secretary Trogdon already talked about this, but I have a little more data that I'd like to share with you because it is interesting. But before I look forward, I want to look back for a second. I went through and reviewed the department's preliminary expenditure numbers since 2009. From 2009 to 2015, the average fiscal year preliminary engineering expenditures was $171 million. The low being in 2010, that was $148 million, and the high being in 2013, that was $192 million. In 2016, the PE went up to 215. In 2017, PE went up to 266 million. In 2018, PE went up to 408 million, and in 2019, it was at 515. The uptick in the PE expenditures for 2016 and 2017 is essentially when the department placed a focus on improving program delivery, accelerated a ton of projects. One last thing, the secretary said that we are committed to $375 million to be spent in preliminary engineering this fiscal year. And I will just point out that over the 2009 to 2015 average, 375 is more than double of what those years' expenditures were. Additionally, our CEI program is not going anywhere. I've heard a lot of concerns about it. It is not going anywhere. I will tell you that we continue to focus on being efficient, working with our in-house and our industry partners, and effectively and efficiently managing our resources based upon the workloads as it ebbs and flows. From a project delivery perspective, we see no change anticipated for the 70-30 split between what is managed between the divisions and what will be managed centrally. I will point out that centrally managed projects are managed on behalf of the divisions. We continue to place an emphasis on improving program delivery by meeting state and federal regulations to deliver projects more efficiently with less costs and in a reduced time frame, which will allow us to deliver more projects. I appreciate your all's support. I appreciate your participation in our successes, and I look forward to your continued commitment to assisting us in improving program delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And our last speaker for the general session, Ms. Julie White, the Deputy Secretary for Multimodal Transportation. Welcome, Julie.
Good morning. The great thing about having slides, it means my face is not projected up. so big you'd be looking at my gray hairs and my pores. So this is great. So I'm going to take you through a little bit about what's happening in the multi-modes at DOT. Thank you so much, ACEC and DOT and Terry and Greg, for giving us a chance to share with you all what's happening in the modes. Chris talked about the culture change that we're doing at DOT, and I couldn't appreciate his partnership more in making sure that we call them sides of the house at DOT, that our side of the house doesn't stay over in our side of the house. We get out of those, what do we call them, silos, centers of excellence, silos of excellence, and we do things together across all of DOT, and part of that is integrating the modes into IDP, IPD, and everything that we do. So, Terry, is this my slide advancer? Okay. All right, so let me just briefly share one big moment, because in this room, I think it'll really mean something to y'all. I've been at the DOT for 2 years now. It is a spectacular place to work because it is full of engineers and planners and infrastructure experts who solve problems every single day. And last night was a red letter day in my house because my son submitted his application to the NC State Civil Engineering program for next year. Go Wolfpack, right? So I have to share that with y'all because I see so much of the problem solving and values and characteristics that I appreciate so much in the folks that I work with at DOT and in our partners across all of the industry in my son. And so I hope someday he's sitting here in this audience with all of you solving these problems. And I really hope that he's focused on the modes when they start talking about them. So who are we? We are the Rail Division, the Division of Aviation, the ferry system, and if you haven't heard, we recently combined our Division of Bicycle and Pedestrian and our Public Transit Division into our newly named Integrated Mobility Division, and I'm going to talk to you more about that as we go. So I always use the Secretary's remarks for us as our calling card, our guiding post. And what he always says to us is build the projects and services that local communities want, need, and will use. And I think he's so good at being really clear and simple and easy with what it is we're supposed to be doing. So one of the things we've done in the last 2 years is really stepped up how we listen to our customers, our local governments and local partners. And so you'll see just a sampling there of the amount of stakeholder engagement that we have done over the last 2 years to tell us what it is we need to do to support our local communities. And we're really proud to do that for them. So one of the units I'm so excited about is our rail division. I will tell y'all, the Secretary has set for them some really big goals, and they are totally queued up to meet them. So first and foremost, he told us he wants faster and more reliable service in our train from Raleigh to Charlotte. He has set as a goal for us, he wants that train, at least one of those trains a day each way to be under 3 hours. And I think you all know, if you got to go from Raleigh to Charlotte to do business in the day, it is rare that you can count on our highway system to get you there in under 3 hours. So if we can make our rail program competitive with the highways, then we should see the increased ridership he wants to see from us. He wants double ridership on that route. We're up 31% since we opened Raleigh Union Station. We know that opening new stations and getting them where they need to be will help increase our ridership. Hopefully you've heard about Charlotte Gateway Station. If you have taken our train from Raleigh to Charlotte, the first time I think I did was about 10 years ago for work. I had my little rollerboard suitcase. This was pre-Uber and Lyft and all that, and I didn't even think ahead, right? I got on the train in downtown Raleigh. I got off the train in what I thought would be uptown Charlotte, and I looked around and I said, I am not in uptown Charlotte, where am I? And I could see uptown Charlotte across the way, and me and my little rollerboard walked the rest of the way. When we moved that station to uptown Charlotte, to next door to Panther Stadium, to next door to the minor league baseball, to where you want to be to do things, we expect a giant jump in ridership. We think it's going to be really something spectacular. And what's going to be special about it is it's a P3. It will be the train station, but it will also have a mixed-use development to it that we think will be like a guiding post nationwide for what a mixed-use project should be. So keep an eye on that project. Commuter Rail. So there is a real movement in this state and opportunity right now for commuter rail. I want to tell y'all, I see this as sort of our railvolution, our rail 2.0. I like to name things, my team knows. And commuter rail is the next big thing. And the reason I think we're going to be really good at commuter rail is not only that we have one of the best rail divisions hands down in the country, but that they are super good at winning money. So passenger rail and freight rail have no dedicated federal funding. You got to go compete for it. It's all discretionary. You'll see on this slide, we just recently announced we won a $77 million grant. We are buying new trains, which is super exciting. If you don't know, our trains are from 1964. We built that program out of pennies by buying old shells of trains. We have Korean War trains. We have Ringling Brother trains. Our folks are so smart, they said, we'll buy those for the value of the scrap metal, we'll upfit them, and we'll build a program out of nothing. And they've done an amazing job of it. But Amtrak is about to replace their entire Eastern Seaboard fleet with new Siemens trains. They're super pretty. And once you start seeing those, you're going to be like, well, where's our pretty new trains? So we're getting new trains. We're really excited about that. We went and told the secretary, Mr. Secretary, we won $77 million to get a new train set. Isn't this great? And he said, yeah, that's great. Good job. Can you turn it into an entire new fleet? So like a great general, he always says, what's the next big goal? And so we're actually trying to determine, could we turn that into a down payment, buy a whole new fleet? So we're working through that right now. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. The secretary was recently asked to chair the Council on Rail Transportation for AASHTO. We're really proud when they called and asked him to do that. They said it's because your rail program is doing more than any other rail program in the country. So we were just thrilled to have him in that leadership role, and that means he's more engaged in rail than ever, which is great. Quick update on CCX, a project we're incredibly proud to have saved for the state. We plan to have it functionally open by October of 2020. It's on a very aggressive timetable. We are moving dirt. It's coming along really well, so I'm thrilled to share that with you. And then we have our Southeast Corridor project. If you'll recall, we have the environmental documents done on the high-speed rail program to go from DC to Charlotte. We are going to be pursuing a federal grant opportunity in January, CRISI 2020. We have this crazy idea that we should buy the corridor that runs from the Virginia line through Raleigh and down to the South Carolina line. So it's a CSX line. As you may know, Class 1 railroads are chasing their stockholder price. They are shedding lines that they are no longer interested in, and that is a line that they are interested in selling. We examined it and said, okay, if the state didn't have an interest in it, what would happen to it? We think that there's a little bit of movement on it. A short line may buy a segment or two, but if they do, we think the state misses an opportunity. So we're talking to a lot of our partners along the line, partners who have an interest in it. How could we do the high-speed rail, commuter rail, freight rail? It touches the Montcure megasite. How could we put all those things on that corridor in a really meaningful way? So if we do it well and we go and we win that grant, we hope to secure that corridor, and who knows, maybe Hyperloop. Hyperloop is actually looking for 6 straight miles to build their next try. And we think that could be an amazing corridor to put that trial project in. And if it goes well, maybe it's the first Hyperloop corridor in the country. Our Ferry Division is doing a long-range study looking 30 years into the future. Our program has an incredible amount of opportunity to help Eastern North Carolina and grow our rural communities. They're looking at ridership trends, propulsion systems, maintenance needs, sustainability, efficiencies. We have a number of workforce initiatives because we're having a hard time finding our workforce in Eastern North Carolina, so we're growing our apprentice program with the community colleges, making sure we're training and growing our own workforce. We are incredibly proud. Our passenger ferry success was just an absolute overwhelming success this summer. As you can see from our statistics, it was really a incredible opportunity for Ocracoke, who needs it right now more than ever. We started the program with, I think, 45 days notice. Our boat isn't ready yet. It's being constructed. It wasn't ready. So we went and found a boat to lease, got it down here and tested it. It fit our needs, stood it up in 45 days, did 2 days of ticket sales at $0, increased it to $1 after about 2 or 3 weeks, went to $2, went to $3, went to $4. That statistic, 78% said the price was right, 21 said too low, when we were even at $4 each way. So we think this is a really interesting model going forward for Eastern North Carolina. Passenger ferries could work in a number of places up and down our coast. They're cheaper to run. They make a more interesting option. Everybody wants experiences these days. It's an experience. So we think this is something to really grow in Eastern North Carolina. Hopefully you've heard our Division of Aviation is absolutely at the forefront of what's happening in drones. Their response during the hurricane was absolutely game-changing. We are incredibly proud of how we used our drones to determine what was going on with our roads in eastern North Carolina. Because they are always at the cutting edge, they're already on to the next thing. We are moving blood delivery product between Wake Med and its other lab systems throughout its 50-acre campus. In fact, they were on NBC News this week. If you saw it, Carrie Sanders came and did a story. UPS just got their first Part 135. They are officially an airline now, UPS. It's real cute. They have little brown boxes and everything. And they are moving that product at the Wake Med campus. That is through our IPP with the FAA. Only 9 folks across the country can fly their drones out of line of sight. And because we have that IPP here in North Carolina, we're partnering with folks to do this kind of work. Our next big effort we're about to launch is prescription drug delivery in eastern North Carolina. If you need to have your drugs delivered, say, by FedEx in eastern North Carolina, you have to take 4 hours off work. They'll give you a 4-hour window. You sit at home and you wait. That's not very practicable for many people, so we're thinking drone delivery could really help solve that problem. And then we're moving into unmanned traffic management. Believe it or not, Uber Taxi is coming, and it's coming soon, and it's coming fast. So because of that IPP, we are working with the FAA to start to look at how we can help them develop an unmanned traffic management system here in North Carolina. As I mentioned, our hurricane response was really groundbreaking for the country, and as you can see, we have won numerous awards, national awards, for that effort, and we plan to grow our support of using drones and infrastructure for DOT even more in the future. So I mentioned we combined our bicycle and pedestrian units and our public transit unit into our integrated mobility division. One of the new things they've already done is they established a Rails to Trails grant opportunity. You can see our first 3 awardees there this year. We will do it again next year and so on and so forth. So if you know folks in local communities who want a Rails to Trails program, get them to start developing that and get it ready for next year's opportunity. We have established a goal of a fully electric fleet of transit across our state. Not only is it good for our carbon emissions, but it's also cheaper to maintain those vehicles in the long run, so it's just good business. We're very excited in that unit to be launching our first fully autonomous transit shuttles. They'll be coming later this year into early next year. These are level 4 fully autonomous shuttles. They do about 8 to 12 people within them. We are going to have 2. They're going to start at ECU and NC State, and we're going to move them around about once a quarter. We'll have an opportunity for communities to submit use cases to us, and then we'll determine where they go. We're going to make sure they're in all size communities in all parts of the state, so watch for that opportunity and let your local communities know to apply for those opportunities. We're going to be looking at how does our infrastructure interface with those. I'll give you an example. The Utah DOT has launched a program like this, and we were talking to them, and they said, these are ADA compliant units, so when somebody needs the ramp, it automatically lowers onto the curb, and they said, not every curb is at exactly the same height, and so they found when they put down that ramp, sometimes the pitch was too steep for the wheelchair to use. So informing us on how our infrastructure will need to change and adapt to keep up with changing technology. So we in the modes have a goal. We want to see folks pass through our modes in their career path, on their ladder, so that they bring the knowledge that they gain from being in our modes back to the highway side of the house. So I forgive my folks when they leave us and they go to the highways, because I say that's okay. You're going to rise through your career and you're going to bring that knowledge of the modes with you. And so we've been really purposeful about our engineers and getting them through the modes. So we have this path that we've established. Our first stage is our mode immersion. This year we're piloting a program with NC State's engineering program. Every student who gets into NC State's engineering program will get an invitation to apply for a fully paid for week-long experience with our modes. They'll spend 1 day in each mode. We're going to have about 20 to 24 seats in it. And we want the students, before they start their curriculum, maybe they're not sure which field of engineering they want to go into, they get a chance to get into our mode, see the future, look at drone delivery, and think about how rail is going to change communities. And they'll have a chance to say, I think civil engineering might be where I want to go, and I think NCDOT might be really interesting, and I think I want to go aim for a path in those modes. And then once they have that experience, we want them to apply for internships in our modes, and we've made sure every mode has internship opportunities. We want to take them from an internship to a TEA opportunity when they graduate. We've made sure every one of our modes has TEA opportunities. And then we're making sure that our org charts in each mode have an engineering one position, because we don't want to invest all that time and opportunity in those young people and not have a seat for them to go to. So tell all future engineers, check us out. If you haven't heard about our MOBI Awards, this is a program to help educate folks that multimodal projects exist in all size communities in all parts of our state. The award opportunity will open again in November 11th. Projects can be submitted by MPOs, RPOs, cities, and counties. So if you worked on a project that crosses at least 2 modes, and remember, 1 mode is a road or a highway, tell them to submit for an award. We give them in 6 categories. We give them in rural, urban, suburban, tourism, and innovation. So we've got 5 different categories. So, if you're in Currituck, you're not necessarily competing against Wake County. We've got them in all categories, all size communities. We end up choosing 4 honorable mentions and 1 winner, so we give out a lot of awards. We have a luncheon that's super fun to do those awards. It's like the Emmys. We have humor, we have gift baskets, we have envelopes. So come on out to our luncheon next April and see who our winners are. And then if you want to know more about what we're doing, we have a newsletter. This today has just been a real high-level look. Sign up for our newsletter, and we'll tell you monthly what's going on in each of our modes. I hope that you'll get a chance to visit the multimodal track today. I really appreciate that y'all are having the opportunity to hear for some of these programs. There will be one on that passenger ferry project, so you have a chance to hear more about that. There will be a really special one on the Brightline program in Florida. And I have to pitch that one to you because it was really an aha moment for me. My boss had already been there. He said, Julie, you got to go see the Brightline program. I think I see Spencer out there. Spencer took us down there and showed us this program. I said, I don't like to travel, boss. I don't want to go. And he said, no, you're going to go, and you go and you do what your boss says to do. So I went down there, begrudgingly, I'll admit. Oh my God, it was absolutely game-changing for me in terms of understanding how we're going to do our rail program here in the future. You've got to come hear this talk. When we rode that train and they told us the ticket price was $45, we said, we run trains. You can't run this train for $45 a ticket. It doesn't make sense. And they said, we don't care about the price of a train ticket. We're real estate developers. The trains just create the real estate opportunity. And that was really my aha moment, to think differently about how this commuter rail opportunity can really be a game changer for our state. So don't miss that talk. We have AV talks today, and we have BRT talks today. So Bus Rapid Transit, be sure and check out our multimodal talks. And thank you all so much for including the modes today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie. Can we have one more round of applause for all of our speakers this morning? I really appreciate all of you speaking, and I know from going to TRB and some other national venues that we have such a good relationship with our federal highway partners, our industry partners, so it's really good to have us all together and talking today. Lastly, I'd like to introduce my co-chair, Mr. Greg Coles, to give the closing remarks to the opening session.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to see you all. My name is Greg Coles. I'm with AECOM, and it's been a privilege to serve along with Terry as the consultant side co-chair for the conference this year. I'd like to echo her and again say thank you to each of the speakers so far this morning. Thank you for giving of your time to be with us today and to share your perspectives and just very interesting information. It's very important to all of us. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to each and every one of you for being here. You guys are what make this conference valuable and a benefit to us all. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few closing remarks here and also give you some important information about the rest of your day here with us. As you know, this year we have a very exciting and diverse lineup of topics and speakers throughout our 16 breakout sessions. We have speakers here from both our own state and from across the country. So our speakers this morning have already highlighted quite a few of those, but I'll mention again a few highlights. Resiliency in transportation in the face of natural disasters, turbo roundabouts, micro-mobility in urban centers, a brand new bridge on the Outer Banks, autonomous vehicles and trip chaining, changes to our own project delivery methods here in North Carolina, and many more. And later today, around lunch, we'll have the opportunity to hear from an exciting and inspiring individual as our lunch keynote speaker. So you'll definitely want to come back for lunch and listen to him. Please take advantage of the opportunity today to learn from the industry professionals and participate in the discussions throughout the breakout sessions. Our sessions this year are 1 hour each, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and there will be 4 going concurrently at each time. Our hope is that this format offers plenty of flexibility and variety throughout your day here. With that in mind, please make every effort to be in the sessions when the time starts. That will just help us keep the day on track. As you'll see, and as Julie mentioned just a minute ago, this conference has a much stronger multimodal presence than you may have been used to from previous years, and this is not by mistake. As a committee each year, we gather comments from attendees, and for quite a few years in a row, the recurring theme is we need to talk more about the modes. So this year we've made a strong effort to try to bring that in, not just here in the general session, but throughout the breakout sessions. So after today's event, when you receive a comment form, please take a few minutes to fill it out. Our committee reads each comment, and we do our best to make this event better every year. Again, I'd like to take a moment to thank all the sponsors. Without your support, both today at this event and throughout the industry, today would not be possible. And also want to thank the Roadside Environmental Unit for providing the stage decor here. I was trying to think of a good joke. It's like a stage side environment, but it didn't sound too good. So we appreciate that, and it looks really nice. An event like this does not happen overnight. Terry and I have had just a wonderful opportunity to work with over 35 fantastic committee members to plan this event. And I'd like to thank again each one of them. Derek mentioned it earlier today in this session, so I won't ask you to stand again. But I do want to thank each and every one of you personally for all your hard work this year in bringing this event together. And none of this would have happened without the incredible efforts of Jessica Hartong with ACEC. She's worked tirelessly behind the scenes to bring together every detail of today. If you see her, please stop and say thank you. I don't know if she's in the room, but let's give her a round of applause, please. So Terry mentioned earlier at the beginning, and I'll mention it again, please download the conference app and enable the notifications so that you'll know exactly where to be and what's going on today. So with that, this conference is about you, and it's about the work you're doing as engineers, planners, and leaders to deliver the best transportation system for the citizens and visitors to our great state. And I trust that I speak for all in attendance here, particularly from the consultant side. It is a privilege to partner with NCDOT to bring about this vision. We have a tremendous responsibility to safeguard life, health, and property and to promote the public welfare through our work. We've been given a vision already this morning that these ideals are paramount, and we must be innovative and bold, building relationships and collaborating as we solve challenging problems. Let's commit ourselves to being leaders in transportation. I hope that today you'll take every advantage of our time together to do just that. Be challenged, build relationships, and have fun. With that, I'll see you back here in a few hours for lunch. Thank you, and enjoy your day.